Welcome back to Alma. The exciting program tonight was with NAASR, and in a second Mark will take over and explain. But first, just to thank you for coming to the building. Laboratories are that way if you haven't been here before. Take a right, and the drinks over there. And finally, we have a wonderful exhibit on a new exhibit on the Armenian genocide, which just opened last week. And if you haven't seen it yet, I know a lot of you have not, please consider coming back and seeing that exhibit. Without further ado, Mark.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening again, and on behalf of the two sponsoring organizations, ALMA and NAASR, National Association for Armenian Studies and Research, thank you for being here. It's interesting, we were here, some of us were here last week when NAASR partnered with ALMA and Project SAVE and the Friends of Sumbat organization to present another very nice event. And I've got more emails and phone calls and comments over the past couple of weeks saying, it's so great that you guys are working together, and it's really encouraging, and it is, it is. It's nice. We are always happy to work with ALMA. We do so often, and there's absolutely no reason why these organizations cannot and do not work together. And I look forward to the day when it simply occurs without comment and is a regular part of everyday life, which indeed it's well on its way towards being. And I should mention that next week at NAASR, on June 2nd, Thursday evening at 8 p.m., we will be welcoming Dr. Susan Paddy from London, who is the author of a new book for young readers. And the name of the talk is Who Are the Armenians? Bringing Armenian History and Culture to Young Readers. And Who Are the Armenians by Dr. Paddy, I should point out, is not to be confused with the fine ALMA exhibit, Who Are the Armenians, which is currently on display behind you and has been on display and traveling around for some time now. So much for current events. Tonight, we are here to welcome our speaker, Dr. Armen Der Kiureghian, a man who wears many different hats. He is professor of civil engineering and holder of the Taisei Chair at the University of California, Berkeley. He is one of the founders of the American University of Armenia, whose current president, Dr. Bruce Boghossian, is with us tonight, and we welcome him. And Dr. Der Kiureghian served as the AUA founding dean of engineering from 1991 to 2007, and currently in his Berkeley position. Among other awards, he is the recipient of the Moses Koronatsi Medal from the government of Armenia for his efforts in advancing higher education in Armenia, as well as the Alfred Freudenthal Medal from the American Society of Civil Engineers for his research work. He's here today because he's the author and compiler of a marvelous book, The Life and Art of Sumbat, which presents the artist's biography. And the artist is not just an artist, but the father of our speaker tonight, through a series of stories, letters, pictures, and quotations from other writers. The book, which is on sale over there, along with prints and cards showing the artist's work, is striking, and there's a marvelous example of it immediately to my left here. And if you aren't familiar with his work, hope you'll take a look at the book after we see the presentation tonight. It's really lovely. And so please join me in welcoming Dr. Armen Der Kiureghian. And if your remote doesn't work, I will serve as your remote.
Electronics. Thank you very much, Mark Mamikonian. It's been a pleasure to correspond with Mark for arranging this event. And I'm very thankful to NAASR and ALMA. And I'm very happy that the two joined together to organize this. I'm also thankful to all of you for coming here to listen to the story of a remarkable artist, my father. I want to say a few words about the book. My collaborators were Levon Abrahamian, who is a ethnographist in Armenia, a professor at Yerevan State, as well as the Institute of Ethnography. He's a very well-known scholar. He's written the foreword to the book, and the graphic designer is Watertown Samuelian, also from Armenia. Remarkable person. The stamps during the first 10-15 years of independent Armenia were designed by Watertown Samuelian. So without them, the book would not have been possible. I'm proud to say that the book was published in Armenia by Print-Info. Misha Koshetsian is the one who worked, and he loves my father's work so much that when we were working on the graphics, we'd look at the colors of the digital picture, we'd say, well, this is not Sumbat's colors, we have to make adjustments. He knows so well my father's colors. At the outset, I must admit that I'm neither a historian nor an art critic. I'm not an art historian. There's one here, I have to be very careful. My credentials for writing the book are that I have intimate knowledge of the artist. Furthermore, I'm an amateur watercolorist, and I studied from my father. I learned watercolor from my father. So I have a feel for watercolor, but I think it's intimate knowledge that I have of him is where the source comes for the book. I admired Sumbat, of course, as a man, but also as an artist. Hence, to be objective in writing the book, I decided to let other people speak for him about his art. So I started by collecting articles written about him, and I wove selected excerpts from his articles into the story of his life. Sumbat's art was an integral part of his life. He communicated and expressed his feelings through his art. He formed his friendships through his art, and his art had a major part in his family life. So to understand and appreciate his art, one must learn about his life and the environment in which he grew up to really appreciate the source. He's a descendant of the 17th century Armenian resettlers in the new Julfa district of Isfahan. As I will explain, he inherited the remarkable artistic traditions of this community. Furthermore, as Leonardo Alishan has argued in an article excerpted in the book, themes in Sumbat's paintings are natural continuation of Safavid art of Isfahan, which originated in the 16th and 17th centuries as glorification of royalty. You'll see some examples of that. But gradually focused on the lives of upper and middle classes, and eventually, in the case of Sumbat, on the lives of ordinary people. So I will touch upon all these aspects of Sumbat's art.
Could you talk in the microphone a little bit more? I can't hear you too well.
Okay. This is a portrait of Sumbat. He was not left-handed, as you might guess from this picture. Rather, the painting is done as reflected in a mirror. In early 17th century, the Safavid Shah Abbas of Iran pursued a series of battles with the Ottoman Turks. During these campaigns, which occurred mostly in the present-day Armenian Nakhichevan, you can see Armenia here and Nakhichevan here. He had noticed that the Armenian population of Julfa, which is this city on the north bank of Araxes River, was thriving as successful merchants and artisans. He He decided to forcibly move these people and the people of the surrounding villages and to resettle them in Iran. He had two objectives in doing this. One was to depopulate the area so it would serve as a buffer against Ottoman aggression, and the second was to enhance trade and crafts in his own country. The move was catastrophic for the Armenians. Many died on the way, particularly when crossing the Arax River, and their survivors became extremely unhappy. Traveling through Iran, a part of the refugees settled in Hamadan and Arak, which are cities here. But the majority went on to Isfahan, which you can see here, the old capital of Iran. The village folk were settled into two regions to the west of Isfahan, known as Peria and Charmahal, where they built purely Armenian villages with such names as Draktak, Boloran, Khogyan, and Sangibara. The people, the settlers of Julfa, were settled in Isfahan on the north side of the, or on the south side of the river, in a place called New Julfa, Nur Julfa or New Julfa. In Farsi they say Julfa Isfahan, which means Julfa of Isfahan. This is a map of Isfahan and of New Julfa, and I want to show a few, identify a few items. You will see there are many churches. In fact, at that time probably there were 20 or so churches in Nur Julfa. But in particular, number one here, you will see a picture shortly. This area here is where our ancestral home was, and you will see a painting of that. You will see in that painting the dome of this St. Stephen Church. And later you will see a panoramic view of New Julfa, a painting that shows this church here, another church here, number 7, which is Sopovanu Church. In fact, that was our family church. Notice also that there are a number of mansions in Nur Julfa. The Julfa people were very wealthy, they had mansions, and so I will mention about those as well. To win them over, to win the Armenians over, in a series of edicts that are kept in the Bank Museum, the Shah Abbas gave the Julfa Armenians broad religious, cultural, and economic freedoms. He granted them the monopoly of trading in silk and certain other merchandise. I should take my reading glasses. He was keen on making them comfortable. He was keen on making them comfortable so that they would prosper and help develop this country. The Julfa Armenians took great advantage of these privileges and in a short time developed an intimate trade network stretching from India, China, and Dutch Indies to Stockholm, Amsterdam, Venice, London, and other European cities. During their travels, in the New Julfa Armenians saw and were influenced by both Eastern and European arts. And they brought those traditions to New Julfa, mixed them with their own Armenian traditions, and created new genres of art. This painting, these pictures here are showing the main cathedral, Vank, the seminary in New Julfa. It's an interesting observation here to make is that it is a mixture of Armenian, Christian, and Islamic architecture. You will note the dome is a typical Islamic dome, pointed dome. You will note these arches are also Islamic arches. This is partly because when Armenians arrived in Julfa, they were not used to the construction materials in Isfahan, which were primarily brick. They used to build churches with tufa stone in Armenia. And so here they were helped by the Persian masons who built domes like this. So these domes were actually helped in the building of this. They received help from Shah's masons. Interestingly, the Shah had allowed them to build domes and churches like this, but they could not be decorated. So you can see they're very austere from outside, except for some minor decorations on the wall. But the domes, you will see later, domes of Persian mosques, they are very intricately, they are very nicely decorated. This picture shows the interior of the church, and you will see the entire interior of the church is decorated either with paintings or with ceramic tile decorations. So this is obviously an influence that the Armenians received in Venice, in Europe, in the churches that they saw. They brought this back to New Julfa, and they painted the interior of their walls similar to what they had seen in Europe. If you've been to Armenia, you know that few churches in Armenia have decorations inside. There are some, but very few. In fact, Ejmiadzin has some decorations inside, but that's a later addition influenced by churches in New Julfa. These are some pictures taken from interiors of some of those wealthy Armenian merchants. You will notice on the left, for example, the costume is clearly a European costume, whereas again the pointed arch is an Islamic motif. So they are mixing European and Islamic elements into a new artistic impression. Again, this is a typical Isfahani craft that they have adopted and put in their houses. This is a painting done by my father in 1958. I remember that date very distinctly. I was 11 years old. I remember him going up on the roof, and he came down a few hours later, 3-4 hours later, with this painting. This is a panoramic view of New Julfa from the roof of our house. If any of you are from New Julfa, this is Tekin Sanduk's backyard with orchard, beautiful orchard with pomegranate, grapevines. We used to go there in summer to eat. This here is Sturpovanu Church, which is where my great-grandfather and before him, his great-grandfather were priests of. This is the Cananian school for girls, where my sisters went, and on the skirt of this mountain is where the Mount Sofi is where the Armenian cemetery was. Unfortunately, if you go to New Julfa, you will not see this anymore. There are tall buildings, rather ugly buildings all over now. But so this is a very historic, very interesting picture that maintains what happened in New Julfa then. So, let's talk about Sumbat's family, his family background, and some of his childhood memories. The earliest picture we have of a family member is Der Kiureghian, my great-grandfather, who was a priest, adopted the name Kiureghian, and that's how our last name is. As you know, our Armenian tradition is once there's a priest, subsequent generations adopt the priest's name with a Der in front. So Der Kiureghian comes from him. The fact that this sketch was done in 1885, it's a very nicely done sketch. The artistic tradition existed in New Julfa. People appreciated it, people paid for it. There were sponsors, there were artisans, there very good artist. And so this one is done by a Nazareth Toroyan, Stepanos Nazareth Toroyan, in 1885. Der Kiureghian died in 1893. Coincidentally, my wife Nelly and I were in India in 2005, and through some coincidences, we found out that Der Kiureghian is buried in the Church of Nazareth in Calcutta. So in fact, we found his grave buried there in 1893. And then I inquired more and found out that he was assigned to be the priest to the church in Rangoon in Burma.
Wow.
So you see, New Julfa Armenians were stretched from Burma, India, China, all the way to Europe. And he was, at the age of 60, he was sent to Burma to be the priest there. And in the archives, we found this document that says he got sick in Burma and went to Calcutta for otapokhotun, which means change of climate. If you've ever been to Calcutta, you will wonder how bad the climate was in Burma. In any case, that's Nelly and I found his grave, and it was really an exciting experience. This is the earliest picture we have where my father is depicted. He's there, he's 1 year old. This is Hovannes, his father, who was a watch repairman and dealer of antique items, specialty items and antiques. Takuhi is Sumbat's mother. She was Hovannes' second wife. The first wife had died. And Takuhi was the cousin who had taken care of the dying Sirvart. And Sirvart told Hovannes Takuhi would be a good mother for our kids, so and she would be a good wife for you. And in fact, 2 years later, he married Takuhi. The children are Lucid, Bovan, Astrid, Sylvia, and Kiureghian. Also, there's one other son, Kiureghian, from the first wife, who is already in India studying in the Armenian Academy in Calcutta.
Where?
Armenian Academy in Calcutta. Sylvia, Sirik, Sirvart, Antranik, Sumbat, and Takuhi actually is pregnant with their last child, Johnny, my father's younger brother. Ironically, Hovannes, who looks really a robust man here, a year later, or less than actually, a few months later, he dies of typhoid. And so Takuhi is left with his children, and somehow they manage to live. The specialty items left behind, they sell gradually, they rent. Takuhi rents a part of the house. The older kids, siblings go to work, and somehow they work. Sirik is this. In her memoirs, she recalls Sumbat as an exceptionally likable and playful boy. He was daring but not brave. Teachers at his school complained that he doodled and drew during class time. Sirik recalls one teacher saying, Sumbat's assignment notebook is filled with so many beautiful drawings that I hate to make corrections to his many mistakes. Sirik also recalls Sumbat at the age of 7 or 8, drawing landscapes, people, and animals during family vacations in the Armenian villages around Isfahan. This is a picture of the school where Sumbat went. I think this must be 1920. Notice, in 1920, the Armenian school in Iran was a co-ed school. Today, there are no co-ed schools in Iran. In the year, and another interesting thing, at that time, every year they had an exhibition of paintings by the children. So there would be a competition of paintings. Art was an important element of education. this in the year 1924-25, apparently there was a painting competition and Sumbat was won the first place, not surprisingly. These are some of the early works that we have of Sumbat. Sometimes he would sign as Owen. This was sort of a anglicized name of Der Kiureghian's last name was Der Kiureghian. So this Owen was sort of an anglicized version of that. My oldest uncle, Kiureg, who had gone to India and studied in British schools there, he was anglicized, and so my father at that time was influenced by that. But then later he would sign Der Kiureghian. This is some of the paintings that Cyril mentions, that at the age of 7 or 8 he would draw landscapes, people and animals during family vacations in the Armenian villages surrounding Isfahan. This is our ancestral home. It was a marvelous house. This was the Arefko, the sunny side, and there was the exact replica on the other side, Zamakko, which was sort of the not sunny side, the shadow side. In the middle is the guest room. It was a marvelous room, very tall ceiling. You can see dome-like ceiling with a chandelier hanging. The windows were all colored glasses. This is where everyday life would happen. There was dining room, table. This is where my grandmother, Takuhi, would be serving, cooking, and so on. And this was the bedroom. And in the back, there was a series of marans, or storage, where bread that would be cooked, baked in the tonir would be laid there down to be dry. You can see other details, such as laundry hanging here. These are marvelous pomegranate trees. I remember in the summer we would have pomegranates sitting at the edge of the garden. We would all be sitting and eating pomegranate. My father has also put me in the bed. I'm 1 year old then, and they put me there for whatever reason, to get rid of me maybe. And so he put me in the painting also. You will note on the right there's a dark spot. This is the well of the house. There was no running water, of course, there was only a well. And I'll show a picture of that in a minute. But just before that, this is Stepanos Church, one of the many churches in Julfa. And again, you can see the Persian-style dome on top of it. This is a painting done in 1951 of the well in the ancestral home. This is how you would, it was the dole, called dole. It's a bucket, it goes down, you let it go, and then you bring it up. And if you're watering the garden, you would put the water here and it would run into the garden. This window here is of the bathroom, in there, where you would have water. This is those who are from Julfa will know the name. This is gongun. This is what you would put water in. You put it under the sun, it would get warm, and you would take it. You would use that in the bathroom. My father sent this in 1951 to his sister, older sister Lusaper in Java. Lusaper was a poet. And so she responded with a poem. I'll read it in Armenian and then I'll read it in English translation. Patiki Mekari. Patik is Sampat. The sisters would call my father Patik. Patiki Mekari. Ko vërsine mokekan, հայրենաբաղց իմ բոկուն, բերեց տնից հայրական, մշտակարոտ մի անկյուն։ Նայում եմ ներ չրհորին, ու հիշում եմ օրերն հին, և երազում եմ նորից, Armen Der Kiureghian. Your magical brushwork brought to my homesick soul a corner from our ancestral home that I always longed for. I'm looking at our water well, remembering the olden days, and dreaming of once again quenching my thirst from that well. She came back to Iran 10 years later after this poem, but the house was not there anymore. They put a street through the house, and so the well was gone, and part of the house was kept modernized. Sarkis Hachaturian was an Armenian artist born in 1886 in Malatya, Turkey. He studied art at the Academy of Art of Rome, graduating with honors, and at École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. Deeply affected by the tragic condition of Armenian refugees fleeing the genocide by the Ottoman Turks, he traveled in the Caucasus during the First World War and depicted the lives of the refugees arriving there in many paintings and sketches. He also painted joyful scenes celebrating Armenian national traditions and village life. Especially characteristic in these paintings are bright and warm colors of Armenian villages, peasants working in the fields, and the unyielding spirit of the ordinary people. These are characteristics that are also present in Sumbat's work. Hachaturian was a learned and worldly man with broad cultural interests. He was also an activist and an organizer. Arriving in Isfahan in the fall of 1930, he quickly made contacts with the Armenian community of Julfa and set up an art class. More than 25 young Armenian men and women enrolled, including Sumbat and his younger brother John. Here you will see, this is Hachaturian, this is Sumbat here, this is Johnny, his brother, and this the person sitting in the middle is Setyesayan. They were one of the wealthy families in New Julfa, and their house was sort of one of those mansions, although not as old as some of the other ones. Again, notice in 1930s, young Armenian women and men would attend art classes. So the tradition in New Julfa always existed of valuing art. Hachaturian's main objective for visiting Isfahan was to copy the frescoes in the 16th century Safavid palaces of Ali Qapu and Chehel Sutun. This is Chehel Sutun. Chehel Sutun actually means 40 columns. The palace has actually 20 columns, but because there's 20 more are reflected in the pool, it's called 40 column, Palace of 40 columns. The frescoes depicted princes and kings in garden settings, often being served wine or treated to music by almond-eyed, scantily clothed beauties. You will see, I mentioned earlier, Safavid art started by glorifying royalty, the princes and kings. This is actually one of those paintings celebrating actually Charshanbe Suri, which is a very famous feast in the Iranian tradition. These are paintings by Hachaturian where he has copied from the frescoes in those palaces. Hachaturian is a very well-known artist. Some of you might know him or may know his wife, Vava Hachaturian, who was also an artist living in New York in later years.
Was he a watercolorist?
Yes, if you go, well, Sarkis Hachaturian did primarily oil and gouache, but he has also done watercolor some. If you go to Venice, the militarist Saint Lazare Island in Venice, in their collection there are some watercolors from Sarkis Hachaturian. These These reproductions of Persian frescoes achieved widespread admiration in Europe and the United States, introducing art lovers to previously unknown treasures of old Persia. Khachaturian was later to receive a gold medal from Reza Shah, the father of the last Shah, for his efforts in promoting Iranian art. Before I go further, I want to point something out here, that in the Persian tradition, there is no such thing as, particularly Islamic Persian tradition, there is no such thing as painting on the walls, particularly human figures. This is something new during the Safavid time. The Chil Sutun was built early 17th century, finished around middle of 17th century, about the same time or after the Armenian churches were built. I have no proof of this, it is just a total postulate on my part, that the Armenian merchants who were going back and forth between Europe, East, West, and so on, and bringing back the idea of paintings on the wall and frescoes, they influenced the Shah Abbas, who then ordered these paintings on the wall. So this is something that is worth studying at least. Khachaturian needed help for his work at Ali Rappo and Chasutun palaces, and he asked Sumbat to be his apprentice. The experience determined the future course of Sumbat's life. He started his work by carrying canvases, paint, and other equipment, but soon began painting backgrounds and doing preliminary sketches for his master. Sumbat was in awe of Khachaturian's mastery of brushwork and his selection of colors. He was also inspired by Khachaturian's reverence for his subject matter. The two had many conversations about art and about Sumbat's future. Sumbat learned about great Western artists, new artistic trends about Indian, Japanese, and African art, and came to realize how valuable the artistic traditions in his own hometown were. Khachaturian encouraged Sumbat to pursue art as his profession. In fact, he wrote a letter to AGBU at the time, recommending that AGBU give a scholarship to Sumbat to go to Italy to study art. But nothing came out of the letter. He didn't get that. Seeing his mentor's passion for his work, Sumbat became convinced that he had found his calling. Soon after Khachaturian's departure from Isfahan in 1931, Sumbat dropped out of school and opened his first studio in Charbagh Avenue. He called it Negaristan Sumbat Art Studio. I don't have a picture of that first art studio. It was on the same street but a different location. This is the second art studio that he had, and the picture is taken much later than 1931. This is maybe in the 50s. But pretty much it's very similar. It was a small place. He would be working there, and he would be exhibiting his painting there, and he would be doing all the negotiation, whoever wanted. There was no middleman. You can see him down below here with his paintings hanging and his easel drawings. This is a painting, I think a very nice painting of Charbagh Avenue. This is sort of Champs-Élysées of Isfahan. It's a beautiful street with central promenade, roadways, and then little gardens, and then sidewalks, sycamore trees all over. There's a winter scene, but it's a beautiful street. Isfahan and its environs are rich in subjects that Sumbat liked to paint. The area is mountainous and dry, full of earthy colors under blue sky. The woods along Zion River are bright green and provide a sharp contrast to the ochre and umber colors of the nearby mountains and of the cool purple and blue of the distant mountains. The many historical sites around Isfahan provided ample inspiration for him. He also liked to paint in the Armenian villages in Peria and Charbagh regions. The simple village life, peasants working in the field, shepherds returning the flock in the evening sun, the making of Armenian lavash bread, a wedding procession or dance with musicians playing the zurna and the whole, And women with fall costumes filling water pitchers at the village spring were some of the things he liked. He would travel to these places on his bike or a bus, often staying overnight. You can see here he's on his bike. He has his watercolor pad on his back. He has his colors, everything there. And he also has his shotgun for the occasional game. He was not that serious, but he would hunt. He had friends that would go hunting. So when he went for painting, he would also take his hunting gun. This is a painting he did one day where he included his paraphernalia. He's got his gun there. This used to be called rome, it's a canteen. This is water there. And he always had this, he would make tea and coffee. And, so that's his own paraphernalia. A few pictures and paintings from Isfahan. I said there are many monuments that he loved to paint. This is the Naqsh Jahan, or image or word square in Isfahan. Marvelous place. This is Shah Mosque, and this is a painting of that, slightly different angle. On the right, you can see the Ali Rapu Palace. This is one of the palaces where there are frescoes, and Hachaturian was painting, copying the frescoes from that. This is the other side of that square. On the left side was out of the picture, and that is Sheikh Rotollah Mosque, which is it has the most beautiful dome. And this is a painting of that, but my father liked to do it from a side street. This is a side street that you can see the dome, but he liked the action there rather than doing straight from straight ahead. This is just outside Isfahan. This is an old bridge, Shahristan. These are pictures that he took, black and white, with this 1930s, 40s, maybe. And the painting, of course, then comes to life with colors. Well, romance. To cover family expenses, Taguhi had rented out a part of the house to the Armenian Relief Society for use as a public library. One of the ARS volunteers working the library was a young woman named Araks Aftandilian. She lived in a second-floor apartment in the center of New Julfa with a balcony facing the Surp Amana Perkich Bank, the main cathedral. Taguhi had noticed and liked Araks. One day, in January 1940, Sumbat visited the Aftandilian home and asked for permission to paint the bank from the balcony. Permission was granted. A young idealist woman, Araks was fascinated by the artist and stood watching while Sumbat made a quick sketch and started his watercolor. Araks's paternal grandmother, sitting at the other end of the balcony, asked Sumbat how old he was. To his response of 27, she suggestively pronounced, "My Araks is 19. Well, Araks was embarrassed. And in fact, she told me she did not speak to her grandmother for a whole week. This is that balcony. In fact, that's the one on the left is my uncle, my mother's brother, Arshan. And you can see that's the bank. So he was sitting on this balcony and doing the painting. On that first visit, Araks asked Sumbat to write something in her memory book, a practice that was common among New Julfa girls at the time. They would call it Hishat Agarim. Typically, you would write a little poem, an advice. If you were an older person, a teacher, you'd write some kind of an advice. Instead of writing, he made a quick sketch of the bank. Obviously, his mode of expression was drawing, not words. So, simply to dear Araks, S. Kiureghian, did not write any advice or any words were not his medium of communication. Unfortunately, we do not have that original painting from. I have tried, I have not been able to find it, but at least we know how that painting should have looked, because this sketch done very quickly, this is what that size, gives an impression how the monk looked from there. The first meeting led to engagement later the same year and eventually marriage on December 22nd, 1922. In the winter of 1948, the family of Sumbat rented a studio and arranged an exhibition in the main hall of the cultural center of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. At that time, the Iranian oil was owned by the British, who were extracting it, robbing it, essentially. The exhibition was an extraordinary success. In the guest book, among many complimentary comments, there was a statement signed by a Stanley Flockton Foster that read, "Sumbat Der Kiureghian is an artist of whom nature, his sole teacher, can be proud." Foster was an English consulting engineer for AIOC, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, and an accomplished amateur artist in his own right. This is a painting done in pastel by Foster of his maid handling the laundry basket. Stanley asked Sumbat for watercolor lessons. Sumbat agreed and they arranged weekly lessons. Friendship between the two grew rapidly. Then one day, Stan came up with a proposition. He would fund an 8-month travel through Europe, through Middle East and Europe to England, where he would take art lessons, if Sumbat would agree to teach him along the way. This was an opportunity that Sumbat had long sought. As I said, the family always wanted Sumbat to go abroad for education in art. But he had to discuss this with Arax. Remember at that time, my older sister, who happens to be here, was 4 and I was 1 year old. So 2 children, not children, would have been very difficult. Arax had always wanted Sumbat to travel abroad to study art and to broaden his horizons, and so she quickly agreed. To celebrate the occasion, Stan invited Sumbat and Arax to his home for dinner. Interestingly, when they arrived at his home, Arax recognized Stan's maid, Mrs. Nosrat, this woman, as the nanny who had helped her as a child after her mother died. So, remarkable coincidence. She was in Isfahan, and her mother died, and the father brought Nosrat to help as a nanny. And then years later, in Abadan, in another city, they find each other. To Stan's amazement, they warmly embraced as long-lost mother and daughter. When Sumbat explained the connection, Stan took it as a good omen for their impending trip and presented this painting to Arax. So that's how we have this painting, because Stan, on that occasion, gave it to my mother. That night, Arax and Sumbat invited Stan to visit them in Isfahan. This is a picture of Stan visiting their home in Isfahan, in that big, as I mentioned, that big guest room with very tall ceiling. You can in fact see some of Hovanes's specialty antique items, like a clock. This was a marvelous clock. Water was flowing, birds were flying, and some things that were mostly European. Stan visited Isfahan in May 1949. He stayed in the main guest room of the Der Kiureghian house with Takuhi as the chief host. My mother came to the house and lived in the same house as her grandmother, as her mother-in-law. He was surprised to see the high-quality English furniture, silver utensils, clocks, and other household items which were remnants of Sumbat's father Hovanes's specialty collection. Sumbat showed him the city where Takuhi and Arax prepared Armenian and Persian delicacies, the taste of which Stan remembered all his life. He would, every time he wrote a letter, he would talk about the the food. Upon his return to Abadan and shortly before his and Sumbat's departure from Iran, Stan wrote a note to Takuhi. Dear mother of Sumbat, do not worry more than you can help. He has but left you for a short time in order to gather mental food and spiritual strength through contact with a wider world, and he will return a son of whom he can be even more proud than you are now. He wrote a similar letter to my mom, thanking her for her encouragement and unselfishness. The two left Abadan on June 18. This is a picture of them in Venice. They are both painting. So during the day they would paint and they would go from city to city, and along the way Sumbat would teach Stan how to do watercolors. Finally they arrived in England, and Stan bought this trailer or caravan, and they named it Jannat. In fact, I have pictures in the book, and I call it Jannat, but after I published the book, someone told me, explained to me what Jannat is. And Jannat is paradise in Farsi or in Arabic. And Stan must have learned that, and so named it as Jannat. And so there are many letters in which he refers to Jannat. And this is a little map that my father prepared, detailed how many days they stayed there and where they went. And so they traveled all over England, as you can see, and they painted. These are two of his watercolors with the Jannat in it. This is Harwich Castle. So there were many, many such paintings. Eventually, they went to England and they took art lessons in French, Anglo-French Art Institute. This is, other than the training with Sarkis Khachaturian, this is the only formal training that Sumbat had, a few months at the Anglo-French Art Institute. He has many books of sketches like this, in watercolor with just pen, each one indicating that 10 minutes, this was done in 10 minutes without doing any sketches. Stan worked hard to introduce Sumbat to the English art establishment. They visited Sir William Flint, who at the time was the most famous English watercolorist and the president of British Royal Watercolor Society. Upon seeing Sumbat's works, he declared him brother in brush. Upon Flint's encouragement, Stan wrote a letter to the president of the English Art Institute and suggested membership for Sumbat. But to my knowledge, nothing came of this letter. At the time after the war, the British were not going to have an Iranian or Armenian member, so nothing happened. So Sumbat returned to Isfahan in March 1950. Throughout his life, Stan regularly wrote letters to Sumbat. Here are a couple of excerpts that show his feelings about Sumbat and his art. September 17, 1950. I'm a richer man for all those memories and for Sumbat's great companionship. The months we lived together in Jannat were the happiest I've ever had. November 1951. I remember all I learned from you, Sumbat, and I'm trying to paint pictures that would please you if you could see them. I now paint very wet, as you showed me, in washes. For your sake, I try to paint well, for you are my master and I want to do you credit. I do not try to put in silly details like I did at Florence. Do you remember? In a letter dated January 20, 1962, Stan wrote about his plan to expand the boathouse. I forgot to show this. For a while, they stayed in a boathouse that Stan owned in Middlehead. It's about 2 hours out of London. There's a picture of that. There's a painting that Sumbat did it's by the Thames River. So there's a bridge, and I've been there. There's a bridge, and Sumbat from the bridge painted the house. So in this letter he says of his plan to expand the boathouse. The new room will take 5 or 6 months to build, but I shall enjoy seeing a dream coming true at last. I often look through the sketches I did when we were together in Beirut and Naples, and Pompeii and Rome, and Florence and Venice, and Zermatt, and the pictures you painted for me in those places, and at Oxford Farm, and Kenilworth Castle, and Bolton Abbey, and Harwich Castle, and many others, and the lovely one of Hampstead Head. Oh, for me, it was a happy, happy, unforgettable year. The pictures you painted will be the first in the new gallery, and I shall call it Sumbat Studio, in honor of you. I have kept all your paintings very carefully, waiting for the new picture gallery, and I shall keep all of them as long as I live. I wouldn't part with any of them for all the money in London. The studio was indeed built during the summer of 1962. Stan wrote, "My new Sumbat studio and picture gallery is finished, and I have 100 pictures hanging, oil paintings, watercolors, and pastels. Your portrait hangs in the middle of the gallery, and I tell everyone about you." In fact, I visited, in the 1962 letter, I forgot to mention, he had this sketch. You can see the house, and then he added, wanted to add the red part, you can see, and it says Sumbat Studio, and this was the plan. And in fact, in 2005 or 6, I visited that place, I found the house, and you can see the addition. This is Sumbat Studio, and so that's the addition with the skylights for the picture gallery. Unfortunately, Stan died of a heart attack on August 1965, not long after the Sumbat Studio was finished. Although twice married and divorced, he had no children of his own. Most of the paintings and he had a large collection of paintings of my father, most of the paintings that he did during his travels, his brother auctioned them. So we don't have many of those, very, very few of those paintings we have. As a side issue, after I published the book, a few months later I received a letter from England, and it started by saying, from my last name, you will guess why I'm writing. Her name was Gillian Foster Swift. She was Stan's niece, and she was 11 years old when my father was in England at that time, for about 8 months. In England, maybe 6 months old. And she met him, and in fact, he made a sketch in her memory book, Ishatakar. And she showed me that Nelly and I visited her, and so she showed me the sketch. Family Christmas cards. In 1952, there was my aunt's wedding, and so family took this picture at the wedding. On the right is Sirush, my older sister. And, my father said that he would surprise us later during the Christmas time. Well, in Christmas time, he brought this painting home. You will notice the faces are cutouts from that picture. And the rest is his imagination. We were never in cold winter in a carriage like this. He even has painted the faces. At that time, it was only black and white photography. But he would do this in different sizes until the size was right, he would cut it out. Well, he repeated doing this. This became, the original is about that size, and that went to Stan Foster as Christmas card. But then pictures taken from that were our family Christmas card for our other relatives. And so we would send out annually a picture like this. And I should say that many people would send us, even people we barely knew, would send us Christmas cards so that we would send them. And they had these albums, they would collect albums of Sumbat's Christmas cards. There are 27 of this, 21 of them are in the book. But I have just a few, there's a lot of humor in them. Usually it's a Persian ethnic subject theme for our Armenian theme on the left. And he is the center of the scene, he's the center action. Here he is a fruit vendor with his donkey. My mother is a customer, and I'm teasing the donkey. And this is our dog Bobby. He was a member of the family, so he's always in the pictures. Here he's a shoe repairman, Tamir Kapche Ahmad's shoe repair. And of course I'm the helper, and Sirush and my mom are the customers. Here, this is a Persian tea house, and the importance of this is that my younger sister is now there, Takush. She was born here. And so the pictures are history of the family as it grows and change. And later he run out of Persian subjects, so Armenian subjects. So there are gypsies, there are Eskimos, there are welcome. So it's a very multicultural, very inclusive. After returning from Europe, Sumbat introduced many changes to his work. His paintings became larger and his style became bolder and more impressionistic. He became interested in experimentation, tried different media and explored and invented new styles. He painted a few of these. The top one is owned by an American Seattle. It's a coffee painting. It's the remnant of his thick Armenian coffee. He would mix it with watercolor, and so the coffee would give this texture he liked. The one on the left is oil mixed with water. So you can't mix those, but he did it. This one, which we have, is a fantastic painting. He's done it on glass and then pushed it on a cloth. And so the cloth is where the painting is. This is, he used to call it in a sarcastic way, he didn't take this thing seriously. He could do these things, but he never took it seriously, and he didn't pursue, except for one innovation. When he painted in gouache, gouache is a water-based paint, but it is opaque. It's not transparent as watercolor. And so he would do this night scenes. I will show later some of those night scenes which were in gouache, and then he would have a newspaper on his desk, and he would clean his brush, or he would test the color there. And one day, just noticed that the juxtaposition of colors on the paper was nice. So with a few brush strokes, he made a painting of this. So what you see here is most of the paint there is just accidental. It's cleaning his brush. But then later he looks around, finds some figures, and then he adds a few things. And typically they end up being very dynamic scenes, or maybe street scene, people walking, dancing, and doing things. This painting, which is watercolor, is called is how this painting comes about. So you can see these are the gouache paints. This is the newspaper, in this case Isfahan, and this is his water and brushes, and so his colors are random here, but later that becomes a painting. One day someone asked, what school of painting is this? Well, my father, as I said, he did what he liked. He didn't follow any particular school of art. So he said, I don't know, we call it Sumbatism. And somehow that name stuck. And so people would come to him, do you have Sumbatisms? And they didn't know what it was, but they knew there was something called Sumbatism. So he has many, many Sumbatisms. There's a section in the book about Sumbatism. This is another Sumbatism. This one done on the Alik Armenian newspaper. You can see he purposely would allow some of the writing to show through the paints. He wouldn't paint all the paper. By early 1960s, Sumbat had become a renowned artist in Iran and an undisputed master of the watercolor medium. The studio had become an institution in Isfahan. Visitors to the city interested in art and culture would not miss seeing his paintings. The Isfahan people revered him as their artist and were proud of his accomplishments. Copies of his paintings were used as models in art classes throughout the city. Made simply addressed to Sumbat, Isfahan, would be delivered to a studio with no trouble at all. In 1991, there are some pictures here with various people. Here, a group of Isfahani artists, that's Sumbat, and remarkably on the left is Yervan Nahapetian. I will talk about him later. He would be involved in many different things. Here he is doing makeup for Armen Der Kiureghian. He was the most famous comic artist in comic actor in Isfahan. Here he's acting as jury for a competition in one of the high schools, art competition, one of the high schools in Isfahan. Here he's with other artists that's there in the middle. And here, every year, he would take a month or so and he would travel in various small villages, cities, and from city to city, usually by bus. And then he would paint maybe 2 paintings a day, sometimes more. And then a month later, when he would return, I remember the sanitary situation in Iran was not very good. My mother would insist that he take off his clothes at the door of the house, and the clothes, everything would be boiled or watered so that germs would not be. And then after he would clean up and bathe, then we would sit, the family would sit, and he would, one by one, would show the paintings he had done. Every painting had a story. Usually very funny stories. How people mistook him or someone, how they invited him, how hospitable they were. So they were very, very, it's one of the best memories I have of my childhood. In 1991, a monumental book entitled Watercolor of Iran, Armen Der Kiureghian, is monumental because it's about that size, very huge book. It was published. It featured 5 Iranian watercolorists of the time. So these are the masters of watercolor, I would say, in the 20th century in Iran. They are Sumbat, my father, Mikhail Shahbazian, or Misha, from Tehran, an Armenian from Tehran, Ali Akbar Sanati, a Persian, from Isfahan, Yervan Nahapetian, the one I mentioned, from New Julfa. He was also, the second time that Sarkis Khachaturian came, I believe Yervan Nahapetian was also studied with Sarkis Khachaturian. And the 5th one is Hakop Partani, who was born in Tehran, but he grew up and studied in Isfahan. It's remarkable. Of the 5 master watercolorists in Iran, 4 are Armenian, 3 are from New Julfa. So you can see the impact, the impression that the Armenians had. There were maybe 200,000-300,000 Armenians in the country, or at that time maybe 30-40 million. So you can imagine the small community, particularly in Julfa, had this impact on the art in Iran. And I think that has to do with the traditions going back from the time of the merchants in Julfa, who would go and appreciate the art, and bring it home and educate the locals and sponsor art, the patronage of art and all that. Of the 40 reproductions in this book, 19 are the works of Sumbat. This book is an acknowledgement of the significant role that Julfa Armenians had in advancing the arts in Iran, and in particular Sumbat's pioneering role in the development of the traditional Western-style watercolor art in that country. I believe Sumbat pioneered the now vibrant school of Western-style watercolor art in Iran. While his style is Western with big washes and lucid colors, his subjects are genuine Iranian and Armenian. As Levan Abrahamian has noted in his foreword, Sumbat's view of Iranian and Armenian cultures is not that of an Orientalist, a detached observer. Rather, he is an empathic participant and bearer of those cultures. In 1980, my parents, after the Iranian Revolution, my parents came to the United States, and they stayed. Eventually, my father opened a studio gallery in Glendale, California in October 1981. Reviewing the opening for the Glendale News Press, David Jacobson wrote, "If the true artist," these are pictures of him in the studio in Glendale, this is a picture in Lake Tahoe painting, and this is again somewhere in California with my mother. If the true artist is reflected in his work, then Sumbat is a deeply loving man. This is the writing by David Jacobson. His people have no sharp edges, even though they are involved in such daily chores as washing clothes in a stream or cooking food. I guess David Jacobson didn't realize that it was lavash bread that was being baked. He wrote cooking food. His landscapes bear a reverence for nature. Throughout all of his works, a sense of warmth and tranquility is found underneath the paint. In 1986, several of Sumbat's watercolors, paintings were reproduced in Sovietakan Hayastan, Soviet Armenia magazine with the caption, "Striking Spontaneity." In an accompanying article, Vahan Harutunian wrote, "Armenian fine art of Iran is a singular phenomenon in the Beaux-Arts of the Armenian diaspora, where the classic principles and the traditions of our popular art have been kept intact. The art of Sumbat Der Kiureghian offers impressive evidence to this statement. Of exceptional value are his genre scenes depicting the way of life and customs of Iranian and Armenian peasants. His paintings and his watercolors in particular are glowingly spontaneous. They indicate the art's great love for his subjects, their customs, the nature surrounding them, their ways of life and customs." Although the two are written by two very different people, one an American, one a Soviet Armenian, I think they have caught the same thing, the reverence for the subject matter, for nature, and for customs that my father showed in his work. On May 20, 1991, Sumbat and I arrived in Yerevan as guests of the Union of Armenian Artists. An exhibition of his paintings was held in the newly renovated main hall of the National Gallery on June 1 to 10, 1991. Shahin Khachatourian, the director of the National Gallery and a noted art historian, observed Sumbat's love for nature and his mastery of the watercolor technique. He spoke of Sumbat's warm and soft colors and his delicate lines. He also praised his portrayal of the life of Armenian peasants in Iran, an effort, he said, that immortalized what had been lost to uncontrolled development, modernity, and immigration. Print and television media reported a warm reception of the exhibit by the public. Two of Sumbat's paintings are now part of the National Gallery's collection, and a painting depicting an Armenian village wedding is a part of the collection in Ejmias. Here is where Shahin Khachaturian is introducing Sumbat for the exhibit. This is he's being interviewed by Mr. Watertown for Voice of America, I believe at the time. And here is with Vazgen Veapar. My father presented this painting to him, and he was elated. You can see it in his face to see this Armenian village wedding procession. I will now show briefly a small, very small collection of Sumbat's works. My estimation is that if you include everything that he has done, there are thousands, close to maybe as many as 10,000 if I include sketches and Sumbatisms and watercolor, oil, gouache, everything that he has done, small and big. So it's an enormous production. This is a scene near Isfahan, which is the cover of the book. This is a scene again near Isfahan. Isfahan was a place where caravans passed through, and so my father was very much influenced in his childhood. I didn't see those, but he saw them, and he painted those. This is the Shah's seminary in Isfahan from the side street, a street in Isfahan. My father loved Isfahan. He was had a very difficult time leaving that city. Eventually had to. This is a painting done of a asari. This is a place where they extract oil from poppy seeds or sesame seed. So you can see the camel goes around and turns this milling stone. These guys are pushing up and press, and then they let go and this press. So they put things on the seeds underneath, and the press gradually overnight squeezes the oil out of that. An American woman who owns a version of this painting sent me this picture, which was in the back of that painting. My father has sketched it and written what's happening here. Opium poppy seeds, and the camel goes around, and so one by one with numbers there is explained. He did not just superficially, he knew what these were. If they were baking bread, he knew what the instruments were, how they were baking. So he was genuinely interested in the work of these people, the life of these people. It's a door of an old caravanserai in Isfahan. This is a borje kaputar, or a pigeon tower. These towers are built by the farmers so that pigeons sit on the top and their droppings are collected in the bottom. And that's the best fertilizer. I remember when I was a child and I had a little gun, he would tell me, never go with your gun near here because the farmers get very upset. They don't want the birds to be scared away. This is a painting of a family traveling in winter. I'm sure many wants me to tell the story of this. A woman in Merced once wrote to me that sent me pictures saying, are these your father's paintings? They were in very bad condition. They were his paintings. She found it in a thrift store. And so eventually she gave them to me. This and one other painting. It's a marvelous painting done in 1955. I don't have many of his old paintings, so I was very happy to have. Women washing. The woman on this side, this is a Persian woman, this is an Armenian woman. And we know that from the costumes, the dresses. Armenians were red, a lot of colorful. This is a little grocery store in the village, a tea house on the way from one city to another, maybe Tehran to Isfahan, with a samovar there. This is a night scene with gouache. these Sumbatism paintings are byproducts of these paintings. When he does, he tests the color, and that's when Sumbatism happens. This is a pastel color chalk. It's a painting done in Khark Island, south of Iran. This series is Armenian villages. If you've seen Martyrosarian, you will see a lot of similarity. My father, I don't think, had seen Martyrosarian. This is rather early at that time. In fact, his signature is Kiureghian. The one who gave the idea of signing with the name Sumbat was Stan Foster. He told him, he said, you know, your first name is very artistic, why don't you use your first name? And from 1948 on, he changed. So earlier paintings are done with this. So this is a painting that he did with gouache. So that's why it's a bit similar to Martyrosarian, because Martyrosarian also worked with gouache. He didn't work with watercolor. His paints are also opaque. So that similarity exists, but it's remarkable that at that time, I doubt if he knew about Martyrosarian, because there was no relationship between Iran and Armenia. Of course, this is watercolor. This is a wedding procession in Armenian village.
Where's the bride and groom?
This is a wedding dance in Armenian village. You can see the bride and groom, they don't dance. A guest dance. These days, the Armenian bride and groom enter the hall dancing. These are costumes from New Julfa or surrounding villages. The tile here, this is the tile inside the Surpan Prakich Bank, the cathedral. I said there are very fine tiles there. These are those tiles. A courtyard in an Armenian village. Peasants, Armenian villagers washing their carpets in the river. I've seen these kinds of things myself when I was a child. Making the lavash bread. He knows every piece, you know, everything that is in there has a function, and he knew these things. It wasn't just superficial, take a photograph and copy it. No, that wasn't how he worked. The herd coming back in the evening. Another wedding dance, but this one is in gouache. It's not watercolor. These are women returning from the spring, bringing water from the spring, because the jugs are vertical. This one is going to the spring because it's empty. These are some sketches he did very early, 1930s, of a Persian woman with these costumes. There's humor in it. This is a very simple sketch. I found it in his papers. Maybe there's some kind of a gathering outside the village. It looks like a meeting or something. Sumbatisms. This was owned by a lady, an American in Texas, who contacted me and said that she has this and one other painting, Sumbatism. But because the subject includes these mullahs, she loves it, but when she was going to a senior home, her children did not appreciate it. So I bought it. These are also Sumbatisms. Very old ones, by the way. The one on the left we have is a very old one. Remarkably, the colors are still very vibrant. Again, one of those Sumbatisms. These are American scenes. Yosemite, of course, when he was in the United States. He lived here 19 years. He did many paintings, but he never really warmed up to American scenes. He said there was too much green in American scenes. He wanted the dry, colored Isfahan. This is Emeryville. We used to live there, and we visited us and we painted. This is Grand Canyon. These are paintings from Armenia. This is Oshakan's bridge. If you've been to Oshakan, the Western Marshals is where this is the bridge there. It's a marvelous painting. You can't even feel the air. And doing this with watercolor is not easy. The left one is the Karmara, a very small chapel in Ashtarak. The right one is Samusavan, a bit further. And of course, this is another version of Khor-Virab. This is Mount Ararat, and this is Khor-Virab, where Grigor Savorich supposedly spent years in the pit. I have created a website for my father. If you visit there are more paintings in there. Before I finish, I would like to show a short video. They had articles both in Farsi and my cousin's husband, right? This is 1971.
Look at how he starts.
Wonderful, wonderful talk, presentation, and your admiration and pride in your father's work is really comes through, and it's readily understandable. It's wonderful. And since you've now done the book on Sumbat, I want to present you with this very new book, which is also a preview of someone we'll have speaking here in the fall, just published by the University of California Press. From the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean, the global trade networks of Armenian merchants from Julfa, by Sebu Aslanyan, who some of you have heard, and who will be coming back our way in September. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy. We can take a couple questions before we adjourn for refreshments. And if I would ask you please just to stand up.
question is whether I have any paintings of Sumbat done in Iranian Azerbaijan. I guess Urmia, Tabriz, that area. I know he has very nice paintings of Tadej Vank, Substepanos. Unfortunately, what I'm doing now is going around, when I find people have paintings of my father, I go and take pictures. And that's how I treated them. So if you know anyone who has them, I'm very anxious to. I did not have any from that area. For example, I don't have any paintings of the Vank, or even the Vank in New Julfa. I don't have any of them. So I'm collecting. I have more now, but gradually I collect. The problem is that I could not go to Iran. One day I will. Many of these old paintings are in Iran. And it takes enormous time. You know, some of these paintings are driven a couple of hours to take pictures, you know. And so one by one, hundreds of pictures, like paintings like this. The ones we have go back from, actually one of the ones that I showed, I think goes from late 40s or maybe early 50s. Interestingly, well, of course, you know, newspaper is acid, not acid-free, it has acid. So eventually, maybe the paper, but they're as old as 60 years we have. And the colors, I think the gouache paint is preserving the paper.
Yeah.
The colors don't change, but the print changes. For example, we have a painting at home on Alik newspaper. And in a month of April, Alik would write in English, in red color. That red color has faded of the newspaper print, but the painting is as vibrant as ever. The best way is to always keep it framed and make it as airtight as you can. In the back, it should have tape so that to not allow any humidity to enter. That's the trick. But watercolor papers, of course, are acid-free. Yes, I think there are in Iran. In Isfahan, I know there are. But I have not been there for so many years that I haven't seen myself. There is an Isfahani person who's very much interested in having some of his paintings exhibited in a museum that are found. So I can't tell, from what I know, there is a big market in Iran of his paintings. Yes?
I was just going to say that